Hello and welcome to Simon's Gaming Show. Not in the middle of the screen at all. That's just bad. It's just bad all around, but we did it. I can shift my body. I have that kind of power. I hope everybody's having a good day. Thank you very much for joining me. Last week we just tried to play Jedi Fallen Order, but this day I thought I'll talk about it. I got a lot to say. I've been smashing it out. I know. The thing is, we've got to that point in the year already with games, excuse me, where everything kind of just stops. Oh, I've just almost knocked my mouse off the table. I'm a smart guy. Yeah, everything kind of just stops. Like Call of Duty comes out, and then you get a few other games. I know we still got a couple of things on the release schedule, but it's always odd to me that when December rolls around, sometimes when a game comes out in December, people are like, a game is coming out in December. It kind of blows your brain a bit, but it shocks you. And so to me, anyway, in terms of what I wanna play, Star Wars was the last big game of the year, hence why I went out and got it and put some time into it. I'm a big Star Wars fan. Obviously, the new film comes out in, 3 weeks? Something like that. It's pretty close. They're releasing new images for that. Everybody's talking about Baby Yoda. And that kind of makes sense why Jedi Fallen Order came out when it did. But also, given that EA didn't really hit it out the park with Battlefront 2, we all know the issues that had at first, it was just nice to be able to go through something that I thought had a good story. I haven't finished it yet, by the way, of course, just so you know. But, it felt like it fit into the universe very well, would be my point. And I was a big fan. I was a big fan of that. And it's, I guess, especially in sort of the modern day, it's just nice to have a game that focuses so... What's the word I'm looking for? But it was a single-player experience, right? And there's all these worries and criticisms about we're heading too much in the multiplayer direction and online persistent worlds. And I completely get where people are coming from. I don't really like it anymore. I'm kind of done with the whole MMO-type environment and, games only being accessible if you're going to jump into an environment with loads of other people. I just am. I don't want to do it anymore. The thing that intrigues me or appeals to me most in my old age is sitting down, knowing I've got, preferably for me, a 10 to 12 hour experience, which is massive. When I was a kid, that would have been like, what are you talking about? But yeah, 10 or so hours to sit down and play through a video game and then move on to whatever's next. Like, I don't need something that feels like it's alive. I think it's an incredible technology. You think about where we were 20, 25 years ago to what we have now and all the evolution since the HD era and everything like that. Yeah, absolutely incredible. And there's a huge market for it as video games continue to make more money than they ever have. But purely from a creative point of view and what I want to do, I want single-player experiences, and that's something that really appealed to me about Jedi Fallen Order because EA made it very clear that is what that's what we want to put out there, and we're not going to worry about current trends. I don't know how it did actually, sales-wise, because obviously that's going to affect everything. Can we get sales? Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order sales. Anything come out? I imagine it was number one just because it's Star Wars. It breaks sales records apparently. Apparently fastest selling digital game of all something. But then let's read this one because it's Star Wars. Yeah, go away. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order breaks sales records, which goes to show. So, what sales records did it break? That's what I want to know. Has become the fastest selling digital Star Wars game in its first fortnight. That's not the best record. And Electronic Arts' best-selling Star Wars PC title at launch. Well, that's quite good. Beating both Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Star Wars The Old Republic. Well, I imagine it did well. I'd rather just have got... rather just have had numbers. But I understand that takes a while to come out. I can't think... this is a much better one. Breaks a very specific sales record. So we don't know how it did, unless Wikipedia has thrown anything on there. It does have a sales thing. The PlayStation 4 version of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order sold 26,761 copies of its first week on sale in Japan, which made it the best-selling... but what about worldwide? Who knows? In the UK, it was the second best-selling retail game during its first week on sale. Wow, 66% on PlayStation and 34% for Xbox One. I find that interesting. So I've sat down, I've gone through it, and the big takeaway, look, if you like Star Wars and you like the Star Wars story and you just want to, sit around in the Star Wars universe for 15 hours, you're going to love it. Right? I think that stands to reason. And I knew that it had taken inspiration. I'd heard all the Dark Souls comparisons and God of War and Tomb Raider and whatever else I can't think of right now. But I'm surprised they went all in as they did with the Dark Souls stuff. Because if you haven't played Dark Souls, I can't even remember the terms. I have played it. You sit down by fires and when you choose to save or when you choose to replenish your strength and your energy, that means all the enemies in the area will then come back they'll come back to life. I just don't like that mechanic. That's the main thing I want to touch upon today. I know my podcast or my show series when it comes to games is now just ragging on Dark Souls, but it's true. I just don't like that mechanic. I don't think that it depends what you want from your video games. The cool thing about Jedi Fallen Order as compared to the Dark Souls games is you can adjust your difficulty. And as soon as I put it down to the easiest setting, which I did, not ashamed by it, I stand here, hands up in the air, come at me should you so wish. But as soon as I had done that, I found myself enjoying it a lot more because I don't want to get through one area. And there's a lot of backtracking, so I think the second world you're on, you go into this big cave. When you come out of the cave, it has shortcuts, but you have to traverse the area that you went through to get to the damn cave to begin with. And because you obviously need to sit at these fires and you need to replenish your health and you need to save and do all of that, I just don't get the idea of having to then go through and kill loads of enemies once again that you've already killed. Especially because, again, if you are playing it on a more difficult setting, they can kick your ass, much like Dark Souls. I just think I would have preferred it if it was a hack and slash game where you walk around and you can... It's this disconnect I sometimes feel with video games. If we go back to the original Force Unleashed, the best part about that was the first level where you just storm through as Darth Vader and you can kill everybody. No one can harm you because you're Darth Vader, right? We know the Darth Vader story. There's no point pretending anyone's going to be able to murder him or take him down because that's not what he does. So, when I'm looking for that kind of empowerment, I guess, from playing games, especially for something like Star Wars, when I'm a dude running around with a light sword, I just sometimes it takes me out of what I'm expecting when I'm like, okay, I have to go back through everything that I've just done enemy-wise again. I just don't like it necessarily. I don't. It all depends on why you play games, I presume, but I don't. It doesn't do much for me. It is. It's something that I get it right because Dark Souls has become so successful. 3 Dark Souls games and Bloodborne, which I think was the most successful of them all. Although I'm basing that on nothing, that just seems to be my gut feeling towards it. And I think it's cool, like for a developer to look at what somebody else has done and think to themselves, "Oh wow, I think our game can benefit from doing that." More respect to you. Like I've said this 1,000 times, I can't quite get over the fact that active reloading Gears didn't do as well. But wasn't taken aboard by other third-person shooters. I just think it makes the whole pop and stop in-cover gameplay so much more fun. And really, Gears is the only game that's doing it now. That one other game did it that I can't remember the name of, which was very much like Gears. But it was made by a Japanese developer, whatever. But for me, talking about it personally, so I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, I'm just sharing my opinion on it. To see the Dark Souls mechanic like that sort of filter into other games, it didn't affect my enjoyment overall of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, because I get a kick out of it, but it's just something that I prefer wasn't there, or something that I could turn off. Like, I imagine that's way too hard from a back-end point of view to be able to choose these different directions. But it would be fantastic if you could, can I just have a basic experience where I enjoy that? And I guess you can do that because again, you can play it on easy, but I don't know. Outside of that, though, great characterization, a really simple but cool Star Wars story about, trying to, again, the Jedi Fallen Order. The clue is in the name. It's after Episode 3. The Empire's on the rise. They're crushing planets. All the Jedis are being killed. And now we need to start rebuilding, the Jedi Order, essentially, to start the events that happens in Episode 4. That's a cool little thing, especially within a video game. I know Jedi Knight did a good job of filling in some gaps too, but it's been a long time since Jedi Knight, and there'll be a whole generation of people that have grown up on Star Wars that may have never even played it. They never played Dark Forces, never played KOTOR, never played KOTOR 2. And this, the good thing about it, I guess, looking at it from that point of view, the good thing about it is if you are of that generation, you probably flipping love Dark Souls because everybody of that generation does. And if you're into Star Wars and you get those similarities, it's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. So, but it is a good game. Don't get me wrong. If I was going to put a score on it, even though it's absolutely redundant, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. But as I've said before, even though it makes absolutely no sense, I think that an 8 out of 10 video game can actually be better than a 10 out of 10 video game. It depends how you approach the critical system. But in terms of, what do you call it? In terms of, when you get a really, really well-made 8 out of 10 game that doesn't essentially take too many risks, but sticks to what it knows is good, it can just be so incredibly fun, and it doesn't outstay its welcome, and it just leaves you feeling happy, which is exactly what games should do. The remake of Tomb Raider in 2013, I think it was, is my ultimate 8 out of 10 game. Like, I could have told you exactly how that game was going to play out before I even played it, but I was so happy it did go that way because it was awesome, and it was great, and I had such a good time playing it, and I love those experiences. Like, I really, really do. In fact, the story, at the same time when I was playing that Tomb Raider remake, reboot, when they started again and just called it Tomb Raider, I was also playing Bioshock Infinite. Now, in terms of ideas and pushing the boundaries and whichever words you want to use, Bioshock Infinite is way above where Tomb Raider was and is an absolutely fascinating piece of entertainment that you can extrapolate and you can pull apart and you can discuss, and some people like it and some people don't like it, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic, but I may argue it wasn't as fun as Tomb Raider, but on a sliding scale, on a Metacritic or an average review score site, I imagine Bioshock Infinite got a bunch of 10s and Tomb Raider would have been more to the 7s to 8s point of view. But yeah, got more entertainment out of the 8 out of 10 game. And I'm not saying that Star Wars falls into that category, but like I say, there's a lot of sliding down ice, there's a lot of platforming, a lot of running on walls, you've got a lightsaber again, that's always fun. And it just ticks a lot of boxes, and I'm okay with that. Shout out to Matthew Bailey in the super chat who says, I think there needs to be some challenge in games to make it worthwhile and make me feel some accomplishment for beating enemies. I totally get that. I really do. And obviously that apes back to the original video game, well, Pong, but when it started to sort of breach out into the mainstream, which was the arcade game, where developers would deliberately make it hard so you kept putting your pound coin or your dollar into the machine. That's why they did it. I don't want hard and challenging games to go away, but I have got to the point now with the medium where I don't want that. I'm the opposite to you, Matthew. I just want I want it to make me feel good. Like, my favorite combat in any game ever is in the Batman Arkham games. I think it's wonderful, and one of the reasons for that is because with a well-timed button press, I think it's Y or whatever it is on the controller, you'll do a reversal, you'll do a counter, and because it makes you feel so much like Batman, and because it feels so cool, that is enough for me to continually go back to those games and get something out of it. I go the opposite way in the sense, if something keeps kicking my ass over and over again, I just turn it off and I don't want to play it, because you're completely right. If you are able to complete those games, you get a sense of accomplishment. But I go the other way, where I'm like, well, if this thing just keeps giving me the game over screen, I'm not getting anywhere, kind of feel like I'm wasting my life. I feel like, what am I actually going to get out of this? Whereas the same as when I watch a movie or listen to a piece of music, it's about the emotions that it stirs up inside of me. And really, when a game is too hard, it just pisses me off. And that's not really what I want out of my entertainment. Not saying that Star Wars does any of that, by the way. I don't mind the mechanic anywhere near as much as I do elsewhere, because, again, you can filter it and you can tweak the options so that it does benefit your experience. But I could have done away with it altogether, and it would have made, I would have preferred it. I just would. But it is excellent. If you're a Star Wars fan, you should definitely play it. I know it's quite pricey. I think it cost me £55, which is just crazy. But yeah, if you sort of Christmas is coming up, or I'm sure there'll be a price drop eventually, and you're kind of intrigued, especially after you've seen the movie and you're in that Star Wars place, I would give it a recommended if that's the kind of thing that you wanted. And I look forward to playing it. I think that's important too, and it's better than Battlefront 2, without a shadow of a doubt. If you're interested as well, the best Star Wars game I've ever played is Knights of the Old Republic. Again, because I thought the story was so good. Dark Forces is up there. Jedi Knight is brilliant. KOTOR 2 as well, even though it was made by Obsidian. Obviously, BioWare made the original. I think they were probably my favourite Star Wars games off the top of my head. The Force Unleashed and The Force Unleashed 2 are good. I respect what LucasArts did with that. It just didn't really seem to permeate as much as everybody expected, which I never really understood. Quick shout out as well, just to thank everybody for listening and thank everyone for being here on YouTube, and to remind you it's also a podcast. You can get it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, everything. And also to pimp out my Patreon, just because I redid it today. I went through it, I updated it to kind of match where I currently am in my life. It's just patreon.com/SimonMiller316. There is a link in the description below if you want to click it and have a look. But yeah, I've kind of updated some of the tiers, updated some of the rewards, because as I've said before, and as I'll reiterate here without wanting to be too much of a shill, I'm really looking to try and do more of my own personal stuff. But at the moment, just may as well be honest, the Patreon isn't headed in the right direction. So I'm like, well, I've got to talk about it more. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then we can come up with a plan B. But yeah, there's loads of tiers. It's like $1, $3, $5, $10, $20, $40, $50. There's loads. And even if you can just throw me $1 in the pot, it really, really does help. So yeah, that would be great. If you ever enjoyed any of my stuff, or you're happy to, and also if you want something because of your money, there is, like I say, I put rewards in there where you can get physical goods sent to your house, so at least it feels like you've got something out the other side. And hey, if it doesn't happen, that's cool too. It's completely up to you. I know everyone's got their own financial situations to worry about, and if I can't get the Patreon rocking and rolling, I will come up with a new schedule, a reduced schedule, of course, but I'll let you guys know what the deal will be. But I realize, these things aren't going to happen unless I talk about it, so I better start talking about it. I'm not a good salesman without wanting to go off without tack too much. Unless I'm in a wrestling ring, again, I don't want to go on a tangent. But as I'm not. I find it not awkward. That's the wrong word. But I never want to feel like I'm saying people give me money, because everyone's got money worries. I get it. KOTOR is the greatest Star Wars game ever in the chat. I completely agree. It's amazing. I won't talk about the twist in case you haven't played it, even though the game came out in 2002, I think, something like that. So it's about 20 years old. And I imagine it's quite hard to play now because we have moved on. It's got proper old school turn-based combat. But I love it. I mean, especially, again, I don't know if I could play it now just because I'm so used to different systems. But, the environments, obviously the BioWare multi-branch storytelling is in there, which was perfect for Star Wars because you can choose to be a good guy or a bad guy. The coolest thing about KOTOR is you can pretty much spend 65% of that game being good or bad. And then you get this huge twist and this huge choice halfway through the game. And if you want to turn all that on a dime, you absolutely can. And that's what I did. I tried to play it reacting and making choices that I would make as Simon Miller. And then when I found out about this huge story shift halfway through, I was like, screw it. Now I'm just going to be the baddest mother effer on the planet. And I just went and I killed everybody. And it was so good because it was almost like this is what I would do if I was going to create my own Star Wars film. I remember everything about that game. It's a little long-winded. There are some levels that probably could have been shortened down, but it's paced amazingly. When you get to know more about the other characters' backstory, you're genuinely surprised. Trying to keep everybody on board is almost impossible, so you do make friends and enemies as you go, and that's going to be different to other people's because they're playing it in a different way. It is absolutely fantastic, to be honest. It's a 10 out of 10 experience. I'd like them. I think they have updated it, haven't they? I think it's on iPad. Oh yeah, Jade Star just says she's playing on her iPad Pro. It did get updated, but I think if you're like a proper modern gamer, the actual core of the combat would have to be completely changed around for it to make sense, because it really, really is old school. But yeah, absolutely fantastic game. Like, it's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And it's the same with Dark Forces, really. I'm turning into a Star Wars loving, but Dark Forces, which obviously is a first-person shooter, is one of the first FPSs I ever played on my old PC. And because I wasn't used to that first-person perspective, I found it absolutely terrifying. Like, I found it absolutely frightening. Like, it was... Because things would jump out at you, not because they were meant to give you a fright, but because I was so used to playing like a game like Mario, which is two-dimensional, or a game that was third-person. When you're actually put in somebody else's shoes, it does, it creates an immersion and it creates an atmosphere. And because I was a pretty freaked-out kid anyway, it was, it was quite intimidating, to be completely honest. But I remember it to this day. I remember playing it, and I remember wanting to turn it off because I was worried about something else like jumping out on me. But it was so good, and it captured Star Wars so well that I just wanted to keep going on with it. How do I remember that? That was probably... It probably was about 25 years ago. That's terrifying, isn't it? No, not that long. Maybe 20. Anyway, it was a long-ass time ago. And the fact that I still remember that, it's one of the games that made me fall in love with the whole thing to begin with. When I realized, oh, wow, I get to... Because I think you're just like a soldier in that game. I don't think you're a storm... Maybe you are a stormtrooper, whatever. But, just to be a character in the Star Wars verse, when you're just starting to learn about it, oh, man... It's just absolutely brilliant. That's an absolutely, absolutely brilliant game. As is The Force Unleashed. I'd have to watch it now. But if The Force Unleashed has held up, the original level when you are Darth Vader is something I would say, don't play the whole game. You could probably get that game for like £3. But I would encourage every single Star Wars fan on the planet to go back. That first level lasts like 10 minutes. Just play the first 10 minutes. You'll have the biggest smile on your face. I don't get, why haven't we done that? EA, if you're listening to this, massively unlikely, just make Star Wars Vader... 12-hour game where I'm Darth Vader and I go through and I just flub everybody up. I'm using choke, I'm using push. I got my red lightsaber that I'm flubbing everybody up with. I get to kill Yoda, even though that's not a thing. But just let me have that game. I don't know how it would do. Maybe I know nothing about games. I'm an absolute moron. But I bet that I could get something out of it. I bet it would put a smile on my face. I just can't believe we never had that game. Darth Vader is one of the best enemies ever, and no one's thought to make Star Wars Vader. Unless I've missed it. I'll Google it right now, but I'm 99% sure that game doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist and I have missed it, then I don't deserve to be here. Whatever that means. Star Wars Vader game. That's the only thing I can type in. It's Vader Immortal, which is a VR thing. There is that, which is kind of the same. But no, I want an old school game. Outside of that, though, no, that's just. That's not, yeah, I don't think it exists. But that is a good game. Well, I've never played it, but everybody tells me that it's awesome and it's something I absolutely want to play. I'm trying to think what else has actually come out this week. Everyone's been talking about Cyberpunk 2077. It even won an award somehow this week, Cyberpunk 2077, and it's not even out. But I'm intrigued by it. I don't know. The thing is, with CD Projekt Red, obviously an incredibly talented developer, but I could never get my head around The Witcher. There was just something. There was a disconnect there, which is strange because RPGs set in a fantasy world are among some of my best games ever. Like Oblivion would be in there, The Elder Scrolls, Shadow of the Colossus, which kind of fits into that. You know, I love these games. I played Elder Scrolls 5. And then, so I even got something out of Two Worlds, which I know is an absolute farce. But I mean, I've got to wait and see. You can't make these judgments. But when it comes to The Witcher 3, like I played through that. I played it for a good few hours. I thought the world was amazing, and I thought Geralt was a really interesting character, and I could understand why people liked it. But for some reason, it just didn't click. And that just happens sometimes with games. You can never account for these things. But it was a shame, and I hope that doesn't happen with this. A, because it's got Keanu Reeves in it, and Keanu Reeves is the greatest guy ever. But also, B, it does seem like it's going to be... Well, it's got so much momentum. It's got so much hype around it. And obviously, CD Projekt Red, I think, want to use this to stamp their authority on games properly and be like, man, you need to consider us like an Activision, an EA, an Ubisoft. So there's a lot riding on it, and I hope that I can get the same out of it as other people have, but you just don't know. Robert Jackson, the Super Chat, says, there was almost a Darth Maul game, but it was cancelled. Well, that sucks. I would have played that. I mean, it wouldn't have been the same because it is the character of Vader that I love so much. But Darth Maul is still pretty cool. Again, I think we're all agreed the best thing about the Phantom Menace was him, and he never really got his due. He's in the movie for like 2 seconds, and then he's gone again. I think there must be so many cancels. Remember Star Wars 1313? I think that's probably what Jedi Fallen Order became. It's not a million miles away from it. But I was so pumped for Star Wars 1313. I was devastated when all that stuff with LucasArts happened and it went away. I mean, LucasArts, other than Nintendo, are basically the best video game people ever. Sam and Max, Monkey Island, what do you call it? Day of the Tentacle. These are top-ass games. Brandon Sorensen in the Super Chat says, sorry for crossing the streams. I've finally been able to see some of your wrestling matches. Your selling for me gets a platinum up, and if you work safe. Would you be offended if I threw a move your way in the normal chat? No, not at all, Brandon. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I mean, first and foremost, thank you very much. It's very kind, especially for your positive words about my selling. Like I say, the only thing I can sell is wrestling moves. I can't sell merchandise, can't sell my Patreon. I just kind of hope, my fingers crossed, and hope it all goes all right. But no, like I put myself out there, and if you want to say good things, you can. You want to say bad things, you can. If you want to offer me advice, you can. So no, absolutely. Let me know. I will. I'll be more than happy to talk about that. Talking about Vader VR as well. Obviously, Phil Spencer. I meant to talk about this too, so we'll do it now. I don't think Xbox gives a crap about virtual reality. Phil Spencer, obviously, who heads up the division, was talking to. They were at the X019 event, I believe. I've got the quote here. And he essentially said, the vast majority of our customers know if they want a VR experience, there's places to go and get those. We see the volumes of those on PC and other places. So essentially he's saying that no one's asking for an Xbox and therefore they're not going to do it. I think that's a real shame because he's right. VR hasn't caught on in the way that I think many people expected it to. However, there is innovation within that. There really is. If you experienced it or you've played it, you know how cool that it is. And maybe you don't like it. I mean, some people get sick playing it. But I think most people can be wowed by the technology. I remember when I first played, it was a Gamescom. It was at a Gamescom a few years ago, and I played the spaceship game. That's not going to come to me. But that wasn't the most well-developed VR game. Like, other games came about that which were had far more money put into them and far more presence. But it was amazing. And when I looked down, I could see my own hands, and I just felt, again, I felt completely immersed. I felt like when I took the headset off, I was like, I can't believe I've been in this room the whole time. I actually thought I was in space. And that's only continued. Like Batman VR, if you played that on PSVR, is absolutely amazing. Even Serious Sam is brilliant. Oh my gosh, Serious Sam is a lot of fun. But I kind of think we're still waiting, which ties into my next point, actually. We're still waiting for someone to come along and really stamp on it. Much like, what Halo did, first-person shooters on a console. Halo came along, or Mario did with the platformer. Or, oh man, what would be the first? I mean, for me, the first HD game that made me go, wow, was Oblivion, but there'll be a better game than that. We're waiting for someone to come along and say, we're owning this technology now, and we're going to open the door for other developers to go, shit, we should have done that, which, creates some kind of revolution. That's what I think Valve is going to do with Half-Life. Is it Alyx? I think it's Half-Life Alyx, or is it Annex? I can't remember. Obviously, they announced that this week. They announced that they are making Half-Life 3 basically exists, but it's a VR game, which I thought was the best troll ever. People have been asking this year after year after year, and they come out and go, doing a VR game when there isn't really a massive VR bubble. But I think if anybody, look, VR, Valve are amazing, right? I'm not even the biggest Half-Life fan. I never really got into it, but clearly incredible games, right? Smash the World has such a loyal fan base. Then they turn their attention to being a shop, and they smashed that as well. Like, Steam is the biggest thing in the world. Steam Controller didn't really catch on, but Valve are a success story, and there are many other things that we could talk about that I haven't done here. I don't